The Phoenix Suns have quickly become one of the most hated teams in the league, and the haters have been having a field day with their recent struggles. So today, I want to talk about what's going on with the Suns and what they could possibly do going forward. If you guys like the content, smash the like and sub button, and let's get into this. Now, it's not hard to see why the Suns have quickly become so hated. It really starts by going back 2 seasons ago. They were fresh off their super impressive 8-0 run in the bubble, and they made the trade for Chris Paul, a move that instantly put them as a top-tier team in the league, something this franchise hadn't experienced in a very long time, and well, they might have gotten a little too excited about it. Chris Paul has always managed to be involved in his fair share of scuffles every season, and I think his in-your-face, piss the opponent off mentality carried over to the rest of this roster. To open the playoffs that season, we saw the Suns get into it with Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets in Game 4. Then we saw the constant back and forth chirps in the following round versus the Clippers, but I guess any series that involves Patrick Beverley, that's to be expected. Then they ended up falling to the Bucks in the finals, but once again, they didn't leave that series without another scuffle. After that playoff run, they came out last season with a new instilled confidence, putting together the best regular season in franchise history. Today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks. It's a sports pick'em site that's actually legal in over 30 US states. All you have to do is pick more or less on certain players' stats for up to 25 times your entry. I'm always making PrizePicks entries, so let's take a look at what I've got for tonight. I'm keeping it fairly simple, sticking with points today. I'm going SGA points, as I just can't help myself when I see a square lower than 30. I'm going Kyrie points with Kevin Durant out, it just seems free. Then I'm actually going to do something that might surprise you and take Luka Doncic less than 34.5 points. I love Luka, and I've probably taken his points more often than any other square, but 34.5 just seems way too aggressive in my opinion. Then lastly, I'm going to go with more than 19.5 points for Darius Garland, as he's done this in 4 of the last 5. If all this hits, my $20 entry becomes $200. If you guys want to ride with me or make your own entry, if you sign up with the link in the description and use code JIMMER, they're actually going to give you a deposit match up to $100. Keep your eye out, as they always have tons of different promos and square discounts going on. Thank you PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. Now, I really think it was last year's playoffs that left the league with a bad taste in their mouth when it came to this team. In the first round against the Pelicans, we saw Alvarado's pesky defensive style really get to Chris Paul, purposely mispronouncing his name in a post-game conference, and then trying to play off elbowing him in the face when Alvarado was going for one of his infamous behind-the-back steals. The Suns took down the Pelicans, but in the following round against the Mavericks, they added to their list of enemies. We all saw the clip of CP3 and Booker laughing at the question about targeting Luka on defense. Then we saw Devin Booker roll around on the ground after getting fouled in Game 5, and while on the ground blurting out the quote-unquote Luka special. From that moment on, the Suns collapsed, eventually going to a Game 7 where they would lose in embarrassing fashion. Now, following their playoff exit, I wouldn't necessarily have considered them one of the most hated teams in the league. They definitely made some enemies, but that was about it. I thought the playoffs would have humbled them, but so far this year, their weird antics have just continued. In the game at the beginning of the year against the Warriors, we saw Devin Booker and Klay Thompson get into it, eventually leading to Thompson getting ejected. Then we saw Cam Johnson get into it with Julius Randle a few games later. Then we saw another incident where Devin Booker stood over Austin Reeves after a block against the Lakers, eventually leading to Patrick Beverley shoving DeAndre Ayton. But the game where I think it became extremely clear just how much the Suns were starting to get under the skin of teams around the league was against the Pelicans, where no surprise, we once again saw Alvarado and Chris Paul going at each other, but things would hit a tipping point with seconds left when Zion Williamson decided to throw down a windmill on an open basket up by 9 with just seconds left in the game. This, to no surprise, caused the benches to clear. Now, why I wanted to talk about this and why I think the sentiment surrounding this team is so interesting right now is that things have really started to turn in the wrong direction for the Suns. The team that finished with the best record in the league last season currently sits at just 500 and are 2-8 in the last 10 games. So what's going on? Now, the glaring cause of these struggles in the last 10 games is the lack of Devin Booker due to injury, and also Cam Johnson, who they've only had for 8 games so far this year. So while there's no denying injuries are playing a massive role in their season so far, I still think they face some serious hurdles ahead once they get everyone back, but who even knows when that would be? As things stand right now, Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton are also dealing with injury. Especially now with the play-in, it doesn't seem like even with the injuries, they're not going to have at least a chance at the playoffs, but it's clear they're not being looked at as nearly the same threat as they were even coming into the season, and that's reflected in things like the Las Vegas odds. I don't think enough people are talking about just how big this season is for the Suns, given the age of Chris Paul. By the end of the year, Chris Paul is going to be 38 years old. The only players in the league older than him are Udonis Haslem, Andre Iguodala, and LeBron James. While people don't like to admit it, players do decline, and there's no denying there's just not much left in Chris Paul's career. In fact, we're already seeing that decline, averaging both the lowest scoring average and efficiency of his entire career. I don't think this is a trend that's gonna stop, but now let's take a look at their future, starting with their current contracts. The face of this team is undoubtedly Devin Booker, who's quickly ascended to becoming one of the top wings in the league. So far this year, he's averaged 27 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds, shooting with really respectable 48-37 splits. He's not going anywhere. He's on contract till 2028, a season where he's going to make $60 million. While it was far from a guarantee he'd be on the team on tip-off of the opener, the Suns did end up matching the Pacers' max offer for their former #1 pick center, DeAndre Ayton. It's kind of what you see is what you get with Ayton. Some of his early development was super promising, but it seems that has stagnated. He's a really solid defender with an efficient but limited offensive game. This year he's averaging 18 points and 10 rebounds, shooting 59% from the field. He's on contract till 2026, getting an average of $33 million a year. Then there's their aging point guard Chris Paul, who we just mentioned, who's still on a pretty hefty contract that's going to pay him $30 million 2 seasons from now. Their last really big deal belongs to Mikal Bridges, who's become one of the league's premier wing defenders while averaging 16 points on great efficiency. He's locked up till 2026, getting around $23 million a year. Their only other current contract past next season is Landry Shamet, who they decided to give a deal that's going to pay him $12 million in 2026. And while those are the only players on long-term deals currently, their first-round pick from 2019, Cam Johnson, who's become a super solid 3-and-D wing, averaging 13 points, shooting 43% from 3, will be a restricted free agent this offseason, so they will have the option to match any of the offers he receives. This is the core the Suns have. They have Cam Payne on contract for 1 more year, but past him, they're going to be limited to minimum free agents and their mid-level exceptions. So the question really is, does this group have what it takes to bring home a title considering the impending decline of Chris Paul? The harsh reality is, it might not be, considering it appears much of their once young core, Ayton, Bridges, Johnson, are extremely close, if not at their ceiling. Now this doesn't mean in the slightest that they're in a bad situation, but it does mean they're easily one of the most likely blockbuster trade participants. The possible packages they could bring to the table are fairly competitive. They're the only team in the league right now with neither an incoming or outgoing first or second round selection. This isn't a scenario like we were talking about with the Mavericks the other day, where packaging a ton of first round picks is their only option. Being able to deal guys like Ayton, Bridges, and Johnson really set them up for a big trade if that's the route they decide to go. And if a Suns trade happens before the deadline, they also have Jay Crowder, who's on the final year of his deal and hasn't played all season due to a trade request. I think what's become extremely clear, just seeing this team fall apart after losing Devin Booker, is that this team needs a clear #2 option. Surrounding Booker with incredible 3-and-D wings and a super solid center like Ayton is a great formula for regular season wins, but I do think it falls short trying to take home a title, so let's look at some trade options. A player that really jumps out to me as an amazing target for them is Pascal Siakam. I think there's a perfect scenario here. The Raptors are struggling right now, sitting with a record of 18-23. It seems pretty clear the hope for this current group is dying, and with Pascal Siakam only having 1 more year left on his contract, I think it's probably time for the Raptors to look to move him. I really think there might be a win-win scenario here. The Suns send over a package of something like Ayton and Cam Johnson, and possibly some additional draft compensation. The Raptors are getting 2 young guys early on in new deals. The Suns get their #2 guy in the middle of the best season of his career, averaging 26 a game, and get him at a fairly reasonable price given the limited time left on his contract. I really went in on the decline of Chris Paul, but I still think there's at least enough in the tank that a core of Paul, Booker, Bridges, and Siakam would be super interesting in what appears to be a wide open Western Conference. Another really interesting one to me is Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen is breaking out in front of our eyes, right there with SGA for the Most Improved award. He's averaging 25 points and 9 rebounds on incredible efficiency, shooting with 52, 41, 88 splits. He's doing this as a part of a Jazz team that everyone expected coming into the season to be competing for the #1 pick in the draft. They are, or at least should be, in a full-on rebuild. His value is extremely high right now, and the Jazz need to take advantage of that before it changes, and I think the Suns should be picking up the phone. These two truly might be my favorite options, but at the least, they need to do something. I really think just sitting on your hands, waiting for everyone to get healthy to hopefully make another run is a mistake. At the least, they need to be making a move for a guy like Kyle Kuzma or Bojan Bogdanovic, but I'm not sure that's even going to happen. Since James Jones became the GM 3 years ago, the only thing we've seen him do at the deadline is trade for Torrey Craig twice. So yes, there's definitely a chance they get healthy at the right time and make a run, but that just flat out doesn't seem likely. This team has been one of the least active teams in the trade market since the Chris Paul deal. I think that's going to have to change if this team has true championship hopes. I think Suns fans face a realistic chance that we see this team fall short while simultaneously seeing their core get deeper and deeper into their contracts drastically reducing their roster possibilities and the outlook of this team going forward. It's almost felt like they've made a conscious effort to become the most hated team in the league, so I'm sure in the event of their downfall, there's not going to be a lack of people glad to see it. But that's the video, guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash the like and sub button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.